So good morning everyone. Your 17th chapter is Consumer Protection Act 1986. So I won't be dealing with that particular chapter because you have already done your assignment based on that particular chapter and you can go through, and if you have any doubts you can ask. I'll clear it for you. So moving on to the chapter 18, which is called as Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008. So this Limited Liability Partnership Act is a body corporate formed and incorporated under the LLP Act 2008. So it is a partnership in which some or all the partners have limited liability. So as the name implies, limited liability partnership. So here all the partners will be having a limited liability. So in LLP, one partner is not responsible or liable for the other partner's misconduct or negligence. That is most important thing in the case of limited liability partnership. So in order to know more about it, we'll see the silent features or nature or the characteristics of LLP. So the first one, that is legal entity. As I told you before, LLP is a body corporate and incorporated under the LLP Act 2008, and it is a legal entity separate from that of its partners. So it has been run in order to attain the profits, and they have subscribed their name to an incorporation document and filed the same with a registrar. So that is why we call it as a legal entity. There are certain legal procedures that we need to follow while following this LLP. Then second one, continuous existence. That is, an LLP shall have a perpetual succession. You have heard the word in the silent features of company. So here also we have the same feature, which is called as perpetual succession. That is, any change in the partners of the LLP will not affect the existence or rights and liabilities of the LLP. Then third one, number of members. That is, every LLP shall have at least two partners and shall have at least two individuals as designated partners, and one shall be a resident of India. And there is no maximum limit regarding the partners here. The minimum limit should be 2 and the maximum is not yet specified. Then fourth one, types of partners. That is, an individual or the body corporate. Body corporate means a company, maybe a partner in LLP. Then fifth one, the rights and duties of the partners. That is, their rights and duties of the partners will be mentioned in the agreement, and the agreement will be in the written form. And sixth one, partners as an agent. That is, they'll be acting, each partners will be acting as an agent here. Then seventh one, limited liability. That is, the liability of the members will be limited to the amount that they have contributed by them. So no partners will be liable for any wrongful acts of the other partners. Then next one, eighth one, name of the firm. That is, every LLP shall use the word limited liability partnership or as LLP as the words in them. Then financial disclosure. That is, they will also have to maintain annual records which reflects the true and fair view of state of affairs. They should also they should always maintain a proper accounts for that. Then winding up. That is, an LLP may be wound up either voluntarily or by tribunal. That is way for winding up of this LLP. And now comes the capital contribution. Capital contribution means in LLP there is no share capital. That is, each partner can contribute as specified by the agreement. So the contribution of the partners may consist of tangible, movable or immovable or intangible property or other benefits to the LLP, including like money or the promissory note, other agreements to contribute cash or property, and contracts for services performed or to be performed. It can be like anything, they can contribute like that. So there is no concept like share capital in the case of LLP. Then LLP agreement. LLP agreement means the agreement should be in writing between the partners, and here it always mentioned regarding the rights as well as duties of the partners. It will be clearly mentioned in this particular agreement. Then partners and designated partners. That is, a partner is a person who has been the partner of LLP based on LLP agreement. There they'll be mentioning the name of that particular partners. And it says that, and every limited liability partnership shall have at least two partners and shall have at least two individuals as designated partners. And among them, that is, one should be the resident of India. What do you mean by resident of India? Resident of India means a person who is staying in India for the period not less than 182 days. 182 days എങ്കിലും ഇവിടെ ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കണം. അങ്ങനെയുള്ള ആൾക്കാരെ മാത്രമാണ് നമ്മൾ resident of India എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. So one person should be a resident of India. So who is a designated partner? So he is a person in charge of LLP and obliged to meet the requirements of LLP Act. He is a person who is much responsible, like a director as such. They are called as designated partners. And now comes the incorporation by registration. As I told you before, it has been incorporated by registration. Their names has been registered. So we'll see what is this incorporation by registration. That is, for the incorporation of registration, the partners who carry the business for profit shall subscribe their names to the incorporation document. So there'll be a prescribed fee for this, as mentioned by the registrar of the state where the registered office of LLP is situated. So a statement in prescribed form should also be filled with incorporation document, and the statement should be prepared by either the advocate or the company secretaryship or the CA, that is chartered accountant, or the chartered accountant who is engaged in the formation of LLP and who subscribed his name in incorporation of document. So this incorporation document shall contain the following. What are the details that is required there? That is the name of the limited liability partnership, then the nature of the proposed business, then there should be address of the registered office, the name and address of the partners, the name and address of the designated partners, and other matters which are important there too. So these are the matters that has to be included over here. So when all the formalities are complied with, the registrar will register the LLP in the name specified there. So always they should add the name LLP over there. So that is about the incorporation of registration. And now comes the penalty for improper use of words limited liability partnership or LLP. That is, when they have not properly used the term LLP, they will be punishable with a fine which shall not be less than 50,000 but may extend to rupees 5 lakh. Then regarding the partners and their relation, that is, the person whose name has been subscribed in the incorporation of document shall be acting as its partners, and anyone can become the partners according to the LLP agreement. So the rights and duties will be always mentioned in that particular agreement. That is regarding the partners and their relations. Then comes another term which is called as cessation of partnership interest. So what is a cessation? Cessation means bringing an end. അവസാനിപ്പിക്കുക. അതാണ് cessation എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞത്. So a person may cease to be a partner of the LLP in accordance with the agreement with the other partners, or in the absence of the agreement with the other partners as to cessation by being a partner by giving a notice in writing in not less than 30 days to the other partners. So when a particular person is going to cease the particular work, then he may have to give a prior notice, that is within 30 days, to the other partners. So why a particular person may cease to be a partner? That is the first one, in the case of death or dissolution of LLP, or he may be declared as an unsound person, or he may be declared as an insolvent person. In such cases, they'll be seizing their particular thing. So the former partner will always be liable for the act during the period of partnership. അല്ലേ, അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് അയാൾ എത്രത്തോളം പാർട്ട്ണർ ആയിരുന്നു ആ സമയം വരെയുള്ള ആക്ടിവിറ്റീസിൽ അയാൾ റെസ്പോൺസിബിൾ ആണ്. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഹി ഈസ് നോട്ട് റെസ്പോൺസിബിൾ ഫോർ ദാറ്റ് പെർട്ടിക്കുലർ ആക്ട്സ്. Then what are the rights of a former partner? That is, he shall be entitled to receive from the LLP the following rights. That is, an amount which is equal to the capital contribution of the former partner actually made to the LLP. That is the amount that he have contributed. Then his right to share in the accumulated profit of the LLP. He also have the right to attain the profit from the LLP. Now comes the extent and liability of LLP and partners. So in the case of limited liability partnership, the partners, the following acts or the following facts are considered. The first one, that is, the liability of the LLP shall be met out of the property of LLP. If there is any liability, that shall be met out of the property of LLP. Then the next one, it says that is, the partner of an LLP shall not be personally liable for the wrongful act or omission of any of the partner of the LLP. They are not responsible for that. Then every partner of the LLP will be treated as an agent. Then next one, an obligation of the LLP, whether arising in contract or otherwise, shall be solely the obligation of LLP. അത് അവരുടെ മാത്രമായിരിക്കും. And then next one, that is, the LLP is liable if the partner of the LLP is liable to any persons as a result of the wrongful act or omission on his part in the course of the business. So these are some of the liabilities of LLP and partners. Now comes unlimited liability in the case of fraud. I told you that is the liability in the case of LLP, the liability is always limited. But in the case of fraud, the liability of the partners will be unlimited. That is, even if the act is done by the partner, the LLP is liable to the same extent as the partner unless it is established by the LLP that shall act as without the knowledge of the authority of LLP. And for this, they will be punishable with imprisonment for the term which may extend to 2 years, and with a fine which shall not be less than 50,000 rupees but which may extend to rupees 5 lakh. So that is a penalty over there for such act. And now the next term, that is assignment and transfer of partnership rights. That is the rights of the partner to the share of the profits and losses of the LLP and to receive distribution in accordance with the LLP agreement are transferable either wholly or in part. But such transfer does not give any right to the transferee or the assignee to participate in the management or conduct the activities. Profits they can transfer, but they are not responsible for handling the management activities or conduct of the business. And then conversion into limited liability partnership, that is a firm or a private company or an unlisted company is allowed to be converted into LLP in accordance with the provisions of the Act. Now let us go through the difference between LLP and partnership. So the first one regarding the formation. So LLP is formed under the LLP Act 2008, whereas partnership is formed under the Partnership Act 1932. Then regarding the registration, in the case of LLP, registration is compulsory with the registrar of the company, whereas in the case of partnership, the registration is not anywhere specified that it is compulsory, but if it is unregistered, they won't be able to sue. Then third one, legal entity, that is LLP is a separate legal entity, whereas in the case of partnership, it is not a separate legal entity. Then regarding perpetual cessation, that is LLP has a perpetual cessation, whereas in the case of partnership, it comes to an end at the death, retirement or insolvency of the partners. The number of partners, that is minimum 2 and maximum, there is no limit in the case of LLP, whereas in the case of partnership, the minimum is 2 and maximum is 15. In your textbook, you can see it is as 20, it is 50 actually. The name, that is in the case of LLP, they should add the word LLP, where there is no such rules in case of partnership. Then liability, that is limited to the extent of the contribution to the LLP, whereas in the case of partnership, the liability is unlimited. Then regarding the dissolution, that is in the case of LLP, they can voluntarily or by tribunal they can dissolve, whereas in the case of partnership, they can dissolve by way of agreement. And now comes the difference between the company as well as LLP. First one, formation, that is company has been formed under the Companies Act 2013, whereas in the case of LLP, it has been formed under the LLP, it is formed under the Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008. Then there are three terms like registration, legal entity as well as perpetual cessation. So all these three things, it is not the difference, it is similar. That is in the case of registration, it is compulsory for both company as well as LLP. Then legal entity, that is both are separate legal entity, that is whether it is company or LLP. Then perpetual cessation, that is company, both company as well as LLP has a perpetual cessation. So I don't think so you have to write it as a difference. If the question is asked like similarities, you can write that. So don't go for the differences in that, even though you can see it in your textbook. So what is the again difference that we have regarding the capital? That is the minimum and maximum amount of the paid up capital of public and private company are clearly specified in the Companies Act. That is private company, it is 1 lakh and public company, it is 50,000, where there is no such specification in the case of LLP. Then minimum number of members, that is 2 in the case of private company and 7 in the case of public company, whereas in the case of LLP, minimum it is 2 members. Then regarding maximum number of members, that is maximum 200 in the case of private company and there is no maximum limit in the case of public company. Same in the case of LLP also, the maximum number of members has not been specified. Regarding the name, that is in the case of company, they should add the word limited. That is in the case of public company, they should have add the word limited. And in the case of private company, they can add the word private limited. Whereas in the case of partnership, you will add the word like LLP. Then liability, that is in the case of company, the liability is to the extent of the value of shares. Whereas in the case of LLP, liability is limited to the extent of the contribution of LLP. Then regarding minimum number of directors or partners, that is in the case of company, minimum 2 in the case of private company and 3 in the case of public company. Whereas in the case of LLP, minimum 2 designated partners required. Then regarding the memorandum of association and articles of association, these two are the very important documents as well as the company is concerned. And in the case of LLP, no such documents, but only LLP agreement. Then transferability of interest, that is shares of the public company are transferable, but the shares is restricted in the private company, whereas the rights and interests of the partners are transferable according to the LLP agreement. So these are some of the differences between the company as well as LLP. And now we move on to the winding up and dissolution, that is voluntary winding up. And in LLP, they may wound up voluntarily if the LLP passes a resolution to wind up the LLP with approval of at least 3/4 of the total number of members. That is, 3/4 of the members should approve that. Then only they could go for this voluntary winding up. But if the LLP has creditors, whether secured or unsecured, the approval of such creditors are also required for this particular act. And a copy of the resolution shall be filed with the registrar within 30 days of passing such resolution. So the voluntary winding up shall be deemed to commence on the date of resolution of voluntary winding up. And it can also be wound up by the tribunal. So when the tribunal may wind up the LLP, the first one, that is, if the LLP decides that the LLP be bound up by the tribunal. Then second one, that is, if the period of more than 6 months, the number of the partners of the LLP is reduced below 2. Then if the LLP is unable to pay their debts. Then if the LLP has made a default in filing with the registrar, the statement of accounts and solvency or the annual statement for the 5 consecutive years. 5 വർഷമായിട്ട് നമ്മൾ നമ്മുടെ annual returns നമ്മൾ അവിടെ exhibit ചെയ്തിട്ടില്ല എന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ. Then if the tribunal is of the opinion that it is just and equitable, that LLP would be wind up. അതാണ് നമ്മളുടെ crucial ആയിട്ടുള്ള അല്ലെങ്കിൽ important ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു decision ഇങ്ങനെ എടുക്കുന്നതാണ് നന്നാവുക എന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ the tribunal may also tell them to wind up. So these are the situations where the tribunal says we have to wind up. And now the last portion or the topic here in this particular chapter, like advantages and disadvantages of LLP. So the first one, that is easy formation. That is, when compared to the company, the LLP can be easily formed. Then second one, separate legal entity. That is, LLP has got a separate legal entity. It has it possesses assets in its own name and can sue and also be sued. Then liability is limited. As I told before, the liability of the members will be limited only to the amount that they have contributed. Then fourth one, perpetual cessation. That is, the partner's death or insolvency or the retirement will not affect the LLP. And then flexibility. That is, easily changes can be easily made possible in the case of LLP. Then lower rate of taxation. That is, generally an LLP is taxed at a lower rate when compared to the company. Then what are the disadvantages for this? That is, public disclosure. That is, an LLP is required to file the statement of accounts and insolvency with the registrar every year, and there is a public disclosure of the matters of the firm. That is, the accounts may declare income of the members which they may not wish to be made public. നമുക്ക് നമ്മളുടെ കാര്യങ്ങൾ പബ്ലിക് ആക്കാൻ ഇഷ്ടപ്പെടുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ, പക്ഷേ the disclosure has to be made over there. That is one of the disadvantages there. Then less credibility. That is, though the LLP are formed and registered as per the LLP Act or 2008, many people do not consider it as a credible business. Then retaining the profits. That is, the profits cannot be retained in the same way as in the case of company. That is, all the profits which has been earned has to be distributed immediately without retaining it for the future. Then unlimited liability. I told you the liability is limited, but in the case of fraud, the liability of the partners becomes unlimited. That is also a disadvantage. Then limited liability partnership must have at least 2 members. That is, if one member leaves the partnership, and that is LLP has to dissolve. They have to stop. That is also one of the disadvantages. So with this, we are completing this particular chapter, that is Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008. So hope you have understood whatever that has been taken, and if you have any doubts in any portions or any sessions, you can ask. You feel free to ask every now and then. And thank you so much for your kind cooperation throughout the classes that we have, and we'll meet soon in any other next semesters. And thank you so much, students. Take care. Bye.